The sun was just beginning to dip behind the rooftops of the suburban neighborhood, casting long shadows across the neatly trimmed lawns and perfectly aligned driveways. A warm breeze carried the faint scent of barbecue from a nearby home, but the quiet charm of the area was about to be shattered. Derek, a tall, confident black man in his late 30s, was walking down the sidewalk, his hands casually tucked into his pockets. He had only recently moved into the community, but he already liked the neighborhood's peaceful atmosphere. Dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and slacks, he carried himself with the ease of someone who knew who he was and what he stood for. To him, today was special, not because he was going for a stroll, but because this was his first official week as the newly appointed president of the Homeowners Association. What the rest of the community didn't yet know was that he had been chosen after the previous president abruptly stepped down. As Derek rounded the corner near the clubhouse, he noticed a woman standing in the middle of the sidewalk, arms folded tightly across her chest. She was in her late 50s, wearing oversized sunglasses that didn't quite hide the sharp glare on her face. Her posture was stiff, her lips pursed, and the way she tapped her foot suggested she had been waiting for someone to confront. Her name was Karen, a woman who had lived in the neighborhood for years and had built a reputation for being overbearing, nosy, and quick to anger. She thought of herself as the unofficial watchdog of the community, even though most people tried their best to avoid her. When Derek approached, Karen's eyes narrowed. She looked him up and down as though his very presence offended her. "You don't belong here," she snapped, her voice cutting through the evening calm like broken glass. Derek paused, slightly raising an eyebrow. He wasn't in the mood for conflict, but he knew better than to let people like her intimidate him. "Good evening," he said calmly. "What makes you say that?" Karen scoffed, stepping closer, invading his personal space. "I've lived here for 20 years. I know every face in this neighborhood. And yours," she sneered. "Yours doesn't belong. People like you move in and ruin communities like ours." Derek inhaled slowly, keeping his composure. He had dealt with ignorance before, but there was something especially venomous about the way Karen spoke. "Well," he said evenly, "I live here now. So I guess you'll have to get used to seeing me." That only fueled her anger. Karen's cheeks flushed red, her jaw tightened, and before Derek could take another step, she spat, right at him. The warm spit landed on his shirt, a disgusting act that made nearby neighbors gasp as they peeked through blinds and from porches. For a brief moment, the air seemed to freeze. Derek glanced down at his shirt, then back at Karen, his calm expression hardening into something sharper. She had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. "Did you just spit on me?" Derek's voice was low, steady, but filled with a quiet authority that made Karen flinch for the first time. Karen smirked, though her confidence wavered. "Maybe now you'll get the message. People like you should stay out of places you don't belong." Derek stood tall, wiping his shirt with slow precision. He could have lashed out. He could have called the police. But instead, he chose something far more powerful, restraint mixed with dignity. He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You know," he said, his tone almost conversational, "this is a beautiful community. Families, kids, retirees, it's a place people should feel proud to call home. But people like you make it toxic." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but Derek raised a hand slightly, stopping her. His voice grew firmer. "Here's the thing you don't know. I'm not just a neighbor. As of last week, I'm the new president of this HOA. That means I'll be working to make sure this community thrives. And that also means your behavior, your harassment, your bullying, won't be tolerated anymore." Karen's jaw dropped, her smugness evaporating instantly. She blinked, her face pale beneath her sunglasses, the realization crashing down like thunder. For years, she had pushed people around, spread gossip, and acted like she ran the neighborhood. But the man standing before her, the very one she had just spat on, was now the one with the authority to hold her accountable. The silence stretched between them, heavy and awkward. Derek, maintaining his composure, took a step back and added, "You can either learn to respect your neighbors, or you'll find out quickly that your influence here isn't what it used to be." Karen's hands trembled as she struggled to find words. She stammered, You can't be serious. They wouldn't make someone like you president." "Oh, but they did," Derek said with a faint smile. "Because unlike you, I care about this community. And I'm here to make sure everyone, no matter their background, feels welcome." Neighbors who had been watching quietly from their driveways began to murmur, some nodding in agreement, others whispering in disbelief at Karen's public humiliation. For the first time in years, Karen found herself cornered, not by gossip or authority she could manipulate, but by the truth. Derek turned to walk away, leaving her standing frozen on the sidewalk. He didn't need to say anything more. His presence, his position, and the dignity with which he handled her cruelty spoke louder than any argument could. Behind him, Karen's false sense of control crumbled. For the first time, she realized that the neighborhood she thought she ruled had changed, and she was no longer the one pulling the strings. The news about Derek being the new HOA president spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By the end of the week, nearly every resident had heard the story of how he had calmly stood up to Karen after she spat on him. Some retold it with admiration for his composure, while others whispered in shock at Karen's audacity. For once, she wasn't the one controlling the narrative. She had become the subject of hushed conversations and quiet judgment. Karen couldn't stand it. For years, she had thrived on being the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood, strutting around like she owned every lawn and driveway. Now, she felt her influence slipping away. Every time she stepped outside, she caught neighbors shaking their heads or exchanging glances. She was used to being feared or at least obeyed, but now she was being pitied, or worse, laughed at. In her mind, there was only one solution: take Derek down before he gained any more respect. If she could discredit him at the upcoming HOA meeting, she might be able to win back the control she had lost. She spent hours at her kitchen table with a notebook, scribbling down plans. She would accuse him of being unfit for leadership, paint him as an outsider who didn't understand the neighborhood, and rally the residents who still believed in her. By the time the meeting arrived, she was convinced she would humiliate him publicly. The evening of the meeting, the community center buzzed with more energy than usual. Rows of folding chairs filled the hall, and nearly every seat was occupied. Some residents were genuinely curious about the new president's ideas, others simply wanted to see how the drama between Derek and Karen would play out. It was the most anticipated HOA meeting in years. Karen arrived early, dressed in a stiff blazer, her hair pulled back tightly. She carried a stack of papers to make herself look official, though they were nothing more than printouts of neighborhood bylaws she barely understood. She sat in the front row, her jaw clenched, waiting for her chance to pounce. When Derek entered the room, conversations quieted. He walked to the front with calm assurance, dressed neatly in a dark suit. His posture was straight, his expression relaxed, but his presence carried authority. He greeted the crowd warmly, thanking them for coming, then began speaking about his vision for the community: improved safety, more inclusive events, better maintenance of shared spaces. His words were steady, practical, and infused with sincerity. People leaned in, nodding, some even smiling. Karen's fists tightened in her lap. The more he spoke, the more people seemed to like him. She could feel her opportunity slipping away. Finally, when Derek paused to invite questions, Karen shot to her feet. "Excuse me," she said loudly, her voice sharp and theatrical. "I have something to say." The room turned to her, some people groaning quietly, already anticipating trouble. Karen held up her stack of papers like evidence in a trial. "This man, this so-called president, doesn't represent this neighborhood. He hasn't lived here long enough to understand our values. He's here to change everything we've built. And frankly, I don't think someone like him should be in charge." Her words echoed in the hall, but instead of applause or support, there was silence. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Others frowned. One woman in the back muttered, "Here she goes again." Derek didn't flinch. He looked directly at Karen, his tone calm but firm. "Thank you for sharing your opinion. But I was elected by this board because they believed in my ability to serve everyone here. This isn't about how long I've lived here, it's about making sure every resident feels respected and included. That's my job, and I intend to do it well." Karen wasn't finished. "Don't be fooled," she barked. "This man thinks he can waltz in and take over. He doesn't care about traditions. He's trying to make this place into something it's not. And let's not forget how disrespectful he was to me just the other day." She stopped abruptly, realizing too late that she had walked right into the trap of her own reputation. Several neighbors exchanged looks. One man raised his hand. "Karen, we all saw what happened. You spat on him. He handled it better than most people would've." Laughter rippled through the crowd, quiet at first, then spreading. Karen's face turned crimson. She slammed her stack of papers onto the chair beside her. "You don't understand. He's not. She faltered, unable to finish the sentence without sounding even more bitter. Derek waited until the laughter subsided, then continued. "What happened between Karen and me is unfortunate. But I'm not here to hold grudges. I'm here to serve this community, even those who disagree with me. My goal is simple: to make this a better place for all of us." The crowd erupted in applause. People clapped enthusiastically, some even standing. The sound filled the room, drowning out Karen's sputtering protests. For the first time, it was clear that the majority had chosen a new voice to follow, and it wasn't hers. Karen sank back into her chair, humiliated. She tried to speak again, but her words were swallowed by the noise of support for Derek. Her authority, once so absolute, had been shattered in front of everyone. After the meeting ended, neighbors crowded around Derek, shaking his hand, offering ideas, thanking him for stepping up. Meanwhile, Karen gathered her papers in silence, her head bowed. She slipped out the back door without a word, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Outside, the night air felt heavy. For the first time, Karen realized that her reign of intimidation was over. She wasn't the voice of the community anymore, she was its cautionary tale. The neighborhood had moved on, and no amount of shouting or scheming could turn back the tide. Derek, meanwhile, stood outside the center, watching children chase each other across the lawn, couples chatting under the lamplight, and neighbors greeting him with genuine smiles. He felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, not just because he had won, but because he had proven that dignity and patience could triumph over cruelty. In that moment, the neighborhood truly began to change.